Hello, fantasy readers. So, as you're starting to finish up your first book, and some of you are starting to read book two, you are well aware that fantasy has a lot of unfamiliar words and a lot of new vocabulary that is very specific to the world of your character, right? And as fantasy readers, we really need a whole toolkit of strategies to tackle a lot of these unfamiliar words. I mean, if you read Harry Potter, just thinking about the four houses, Slytherin, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, Gryffindor, right? Those are all completely made up names. And there's a million other things that are made up in Harry Potter, right? That if you start to learn all of those new words, you're going to literally have a new vocabulary just specific to Harry Potter, right? So we need a toolkit to be able to grapple with those tricky words that are going to help you break apart the words and get them and be able to read them and be able to know what they mean, right? Because even if they're unfamiliar and they may be made up, there still may be parts of those words that you can figure out. So, this chart on the left will help you with a few strategies to tackle those words. The first strategy is use what you know about those root words, right? Those words within the word, like angle, graph, right? So looking for those parts of the word that's familiar, something that you've seen. We see that tri prefix in tricolor and trident, and that means three, right? Like triangle. Envisioning what's happening in the scene is a super helpful strategy to help you stay in the moment and help you picture the word, even though you don't even know what the word might mean. And tap into what you know about how the genre tends to work. Think about where you are in the story mountain. If you're meeting a character, maybe the word is something to do with a character. If you're learning about the setting, maybe this word has something to do with the setting, right? Read forward to get a bigger sense of what's happening, then circle back when things start to click and make more sense, right? So oftentimes you'll be reading something and you're like, I don't know, that doesn't make all that much sense. But then you might have to go back to it later and all of a sudden it'll start to click. Try a substitute word that might fit, right? So instead of Harvey half devoured, that would make sense with Harvey half eaten. You may have to even look it up on a reference like at the dictionary or an internet search, or to get the gist of the meaning, then look for the more precise definition later, right? So the frumious Bandersnatch really equals the dangerous monster. And today we're going to read one of my favorite poems by Lewis Carroll called The Jabberwocky. And this poem seems like complete ridiculous language, right? Like it's a completely made up, like complete gibberish. And as you listen, the first time you're going to be like, that doesn't make sense. What is this poem even talking about? So I'm going to read it first to you. And the first time that we read it, we're just going to listen and enjoy the poem. The second time I read the poem to you, we're going to do some word solving work and use those strategies that we've seen to help us. Okay, Jabberwocky by Lewis Carroll. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome raths outgrabe. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the Jubjub bird, and shun the frumious Bandersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand. Long time the mansome foe he sought. So rested he by the Tumtum tree, and stood awhile in thought. And as in uffish thought he stood, the Jabberwock with eyes of flame came whiffing through the tulgey wood, and burbled as it came. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through, the vorpal blade went snicker-snack. He left it dead, and with its head he went galumphing back. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. O frabjous day, callooh, callay, he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brillig and the slithy tove did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome raths outgrabe. So hopefully, let me just X out of my Google Slides here. So hopefully you enjoyed the poem, Jabberwocky, but you still might be thinking that this is very confusing, right? So we're going to have to do some of that word solving work in order to understand what this poem actually means, right? What was Lewis Carroll actually thinking about? So one of the things that I'm noticing is that we can break up this poem by stanzas, right? So 'twas brillig and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome raths outgrabe. So it seems to me that this, I'm trying to use my stylus here. Hold on one second. There we go. Right? It seems like those first four lines are the first stanza, right? And then we can look at every four lines like this is stanza 1, this is stanza 2, this is stanza 3, this is stanza 4, this is stanza 5, this is stanza 6, and then at the end, stanza 7, right? Seems like it repeats, right? Doesn't it repeat with stanza 1 from the top, right? So oftentimes in poems, one of the first things that we have to do is we look and figure out where the stanzas are, because once we figure out the stanzas, that helps us, because those are like almost the paragraphs of the poem, right? They help keep the poem organized. So now that I've done that, I can break up just that first stanza. 'Twas brillig and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome raths outgrabe. Now there's not one perfect answer to this, but my first thought is to think about our story structure. And we know that in the beginning of fantasy stories, usually they describe the setting. So I'm kind of imagining that 'twas brillig might be like brilliant light, and I'm kind of thinking that is I'm using the first 5 letters from brillig, and the slithy toves. I don't know, I'm trying to envision this. I'm trying to envision like it's being it's very sunny, right? The light is brilliant and it's shining down on the leaves and the slithy toves. So I'm going to imagine that this is leaves. You might be envisioning something different, but this is what I'm envisioning. Gyre and gimble in the wabe. Maybe like this is like in the wind. So maybe gyre and gimble means like to shake and tremble. Okay. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome raths outgrabe. Right? So I'm not exactly sure what that means, but all mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome raths outgrabe. So maybe they're trying to describe some animals that are nearby, or like all like borogoves could be like some type of birds, and maybe the mome raths outgrabe. Maybe those are like maybe some mice. I don't know. Let's add that in to see if it makes sense. Okay, now let's move to stanza 2. Beware the Jabberwock, my son. The jaws that bite, the claws that catch, beware the Jubjub bird, and shun the Frumious Bandersnatch. So now we're kind of learning more that it seems like the narrator is talking to his son, right? So we're learning here that like the narrator is a father, right? And he's saying, beware of the Jabberwock. So it seems like if you have to beware something, it seems like that could be some type of monster, right? Or beast. The jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the Jubjub bird. So some type of bird. And shun the Frumious Bandersnatch. Maybe like some type of other furious beast. Like Frumious makes it sound like furious. All right. So fantasy readers, do you see what I'm doing here? I'm taking this apart stanza by stanza and I'm reading it again. And this time I'm trying to use my strategies that I learned from our session 12 word solving work. And I'm trying to think what word would make sense here. I'm envisioning what part of the story I'm in. And I'm also thinking about using the parts of the word that I know. So now I want you in stanzas 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 to try to explain what is going on, right? And find some words in here that you think you know what they mean and do your best. Like I said, there's not a perfect answer for this, right? Like when I was putting brilliant and leaves and wind and birds and mice, I don't know if that was actually right, but it kind of made sense and it helped me envision the poem better, right? So do your best with this. And so you're going to work on those next stanzas and you can type those here where it says word solving work. So find a few words that you want to explain and then try to explain in just a paragraph what is going on in the rest of the poem. Okay. So we're up to the point where the father is telling his son to beware of all of these beasts, but then you're going to see what happens next. Okay. So you're going to write what you think happens next in the poem. And then on slide 2, you're going to do some of this work in your own book club book. So you're going to find a tricky word and you're going to try to figure out what it means. It could be a made up word that's used in just that setting, or it could be just a word that you don't know what the meaning of, and you're going to try to figure out that word, okay? And that's going to go on that second slide. So fantasy readers, today you did a great job deciphering one of my favorite poems from Lewis Carroll. And bonus points for you if you look up a famous book that Lewis Carroll also wrote. So I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.